Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to some of you too. This is Meditation for Lawyers. Welcome. If you have signed up for Mediation for Lawyers, I'm sorry to disappoint you. This is not Mediation for Lawyers, but if we have any mediators, and invariably we have one or two mediators signed up, please stay with us. We'd be delighted to have you here. And this is not medication for lawyers. I'm sorry, I don't have a license to prescribe. And there's, by the way, medication use is up these days, as you might expect, but you may naturally find your own endorphins having you feel a little better at the end of this hour, I hope. I'm George Felos. I'm your host and presenter this morning. With me is my collaborator and technical potentate, Will Nickel. Will, you're coming up in the world. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
You may, and thank you all for joining us. We have attorneys from Florida, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, California, and from many other states. Welcome. This has never happened, but we are online. This is a webinar. If we lose power for any reason, I lose power here, we have a backup. It may take me a moment or two to get to the backup, but stay with us. And during that interlude, you can be entertained by Will, who is a premier guitarist and renowned musician. So we'll have your guitar. We don't want to jinx. We don't want to jinx ourselves.
I've got it ready just in case.
Okay. It's nice. It's nice to laugh and smile, isn't it? And these days it seems that there's a lot out there that makes it difficult to laugh and smile and to be happy again. In our email, we mentioned that these are really tumultuous times. We know just being a lawyer, practicing law, is very difficult from the point of view of stress. I'm sure that you know that lawyers have 2 or 3 times the stress-related difficulties than ordinary citizens. And on top of that, of course, we have the lockdown, the economic difficulties, transitions. If you have kids at home and your kids have been at home, I had small kids too. My heart goes out to you. We've had loved ones or friends and associates who have died and have become sick and have had difficult times. It's really, amidst all that, it's more difficult to stay centered. But our goal this hour is to directly encounter that part of ourself, our center, our source, our core, whatever it is that you want to call it for yourself, from which our joy, our peace, our happiness ultimately springs. And why is that so important? Because we get joy and happiness from doing different activities, but those activities come and go. But the type of peace and joy and happiness that comes from the core, from the source, is non-situational, which means it's always available to you. It's not dependent upon what's going on elsewhere. And so to be able to tap into that and directly encounter that at any time is a huge, huge benefit. And the vehicle, of course, by which we do this is meditation. I've meditated on a daily basis most of my adult life. So I know personally the benefits of this. This is why I'm offering this to others. So The goal today is for you to directly encounter that, directly encounter that in which anxiety may appear, but is always at peace, and that to which fear may appear, but is never afraid. So we are here to learn how to meditate, and the goal is to be able to give you enough today so you can enhance your own meditation practice or start your own meditation practice. So let me say a couple things about, and we want you to relax and enjoy yourself too this morning. Let's say a couple things about meditation, because people have an idea of, what is it? A lot of different types of meditation. Let's dispel a couple things. First, meditation is not about stopping your thoughts. So let's have that sink in a little bit. Many people have the idea, oh my God, I can never meditate. My mind is so active, I can never slow down my mind, stop my mind. That is not the purpose of meditation. So meditation is not getting rid of anything. It's just a shift of focus. And let me give you a metaphor to try to describe this. Imagine you have a big painting, and it's a landscape. And in the foreground, you have activity going on. There's a foreground too. There may be action, a scene, something happening in the foreground, and you have the background. So in meditation, all we're doing is trying to shift our focus. When we look at that painting, we are drawn to the foreground. This hand is bigger than the hand in the background. The figures are bigger. They're in more detail. There's more action. Our attention is drawn to the foreground. Now, the background is still there. In meditation, all we're doing is shifting our focus, so the background becomes more apparent to us. So we didn't have to paint over the foreground or eradicate it in order to notice the background. We just had to shift our focus. So in that metaphor, the background is that core, that source, that center from which that peace and happiness arises. In that metaphor, the foreground is our thoughts, our ideas, our sense perceptions, our bodily sensations, the story we create from that. That's all in the foreground. And we're usually very identified with that. But we don't have to get rid of it. We don't have to remove anything to enjoy the peace of the background and enjoy the peace of the background at any time. So, a couple other things about meditation. Because we have a lot of type A personalities out here. I was a trial lawyer. You put together that giant Broadway production and bring it into court, you want to win. I mean, if we have that competitive type A nature, I'm just telling you, there's nothing you can do wrong here. There is no wrong. There is no wrong way. So just discard that. And any personality type is suited to meditation. So let me give you a little kind of roadmap of where we're going to go from here. It's a 1 hour webcast. It's 1 hour CLE credit. And usually we usually take up the whole hour in our meditations, and the questions and answers start pretty much towards the end of the hour. And we will stay on as long as you want for the questions and answers. And sometimes we stay till 1:15 to 1:30. But if you need to leave at 1, that's fine. We understand. We'll send you a recording of this, and you can listen to the questions and answers later. Also, there's a lot of information. This is a very compressed but deep introduction into meditation. So don't worry about remembering everything I said, or I have to do this, I have to do that. Just go with the flow. These suggestions are implanted. And as you listen to the tape again, if you'd like to, you can reflect on those a little bit more if you'd like. You can see me. I can't see you. I can't hear you unless you would like to be heard or seen. Now, I mentioned the questions. We will have the ability to, you will have the ability to ask questions. We're going to have meditation segments. We're going to do 3 meditations of about 5 to 7 minutes each. My suggestion is don't formulate your questions during the meditation sequence. Do it afterwards. You can ask a question in writing. You can raise your hand and ask a question verbally. If you want to be seen, we can join you as a panelist and you could be seen. So you have those 3 ways to ask questions. If you have a technical issue, there's a chat box. And that chat box is, I don't have enough volume, or I don't know what other technical thing you'd have, but Will monitors the chat box and we'll be able to respond to those during the meditation hour. Okay. Also, you may have questions that arise afterwards. It's perfectly fine to call me. My phone number is on the emails you receive. Call me at any time if you want to chat about meditation or any questions you have or any information you need. You can email me. On our website, we have a question and answer, written questions and answers. Some of those might be helpful and answer your questions. So that's a resource for you too. Let's talk about where you're going to be doing your meditation. You want to pick a place that has a minimum distraction. Okay, there are distractions everywhere. The garbage truck just came to pick up the garbage. That's a distraction. But if you can manage your distractions, if you have an assistant, tell your assistant to hold your calls. If you have a cell phone, shut your cell phone off. If you are in your house, you can go to the room that is the most quiet. So pick a non-distracting location if you can, minimize your distractions. If you have planned this hour for your lunch and you have your salad or hoagie or sub sandwich or whatever you're eating, my suggestion is put that aside. Eat it afterwards. Devote your entire attention to this to get the maximum benefit. Now, let's talk a little bit about your outer posture for meditation. I suggest that you want to be relaxed and alert and attentive. So those 2 at the same time. So keep the body relaxed. I find that one of the most relaxed positions, if you're seated, you have your feet flat on the floor. Make sure your shoulders aren't scrunched up, that they're relaxed down. And instead of slouching or leaning back, I would suggest having your spine erect. There's nothing magical or mystical about that. You can meditate in any physical position. You can meditate lying down. The thing is, our body, because we associate sleep and rest with lying down or leaning back, we tend to drift off in those positions. So to help you remain alert, this is a good position. Now, when I mean be alert and attentive, you're trying to find that sweet spot. It's like the lens of a camera. There's that sweet spot in the lens where the image is sharp. If you under focus, it starts to get a little blurry. That's kind of being a little too restful, nodding off. You can tend to daydream. But you can over focus too, can try too hard, and that can get you, and by over focusing, it's still blurry and you can be a little nervous, edgy. So try to find that sweet spot for you where you are relaxed and attentive. Okay, now I don't have to tell you why to meditate or all recite to you all the studies and all the bar health and wellness campaigns, because you wouldn't be here if you didn't know that meditation is beneficial. And we're here. I promise I'm going to stop talking soon and we're going to start meditating. Meditation is a little bit like, it's something you have to do. You can read books about it. You can read a book on how to play the piano, but you have to sit and actually play. You have to do it. And I just want to mention for personal benefits, as if you read the email you received, I've done a lot of high profile litigation, like the Terri Schiavo right to die case, where I was in 5 or 6 different courts in this at the same time, up and down the federal court system and the trial court, appellate court. We had briefs we had to do in one day. To have a resource like meditation, and it doesn't have to be meditation, other people have, people do Tai Chi, other things, but to have a resource where you can access that peace and relaxation of the core, I found essential. The stress was so overwhelming at times that I'm glad I had it. And the old adage says, you don't start to dig your well for water when your house is already on fire. It's too late. So this is something that will stead you well when you need it. And of course, it's not in practice. It's just in life. Life will throw at us challenges no matter what we're doing. And so it's a great resource to cultivate and have. Okay, we're going to start with a kind of a body-mind relaxation. So I'm going to take a sip here. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. And just take a moment to notice the silence and contrast the silence to the speech. Feel the sensation of the feet against the floor or the bottoms of your shoes. Just notice the sensation. It might be a little bit of a throbbing sensation. You may feel some areas of pressure, some lighter areas, some tingling. Remember, we're not trying to do anything or change anything. It's just a bodily sensation. It's there. There may be a throbbing. You may notice the toes are a different temperature, a little cooler perhaps than the rest of the bottom of your foot. Just experience the sensation and notice how it's free floating. If you say, well, it's in my foot, that's just a concept, that's just a thought, just the sensation. Notice how it floats freely. It changes a little bit, it morphs. And also notice that you don't have to do anything to know it. It's just there. Now bring your attention to the back of the hands. Right where the skin meets the air. Is there a moistness to it? Does it feel a little dry? It might feel light, fluffy. You may get an image in the mind of the back of your hands. That's fine. Remember, we're not trying to do anything. We're not trying to change anything. We're not trying to get rid of anything. Just let the image come and go. But the sensation itself, it's just there. It might feel cool. It might feel warm. It's free floating. Just let it do whatever it does. You may feel the sensation of the back of the thighs, your bottom against the chair. Feel the pressure there. Pressure is just a word. What is the actual? What is it actually? See how that feels. See what that is. And just take a moment to notice your breath. You may notice the sensation of the abdomen rising and falling as the diaphragm, as the diaphragm pushes out towards the abdomen. Feel those muscles, or the coolness of the air as it enters the nostrils. You may feel your heartbeat. Just more free-floating sensations that are happening within you. Now, don't focus on anything in particular. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. So we took, I believe, 6 minutes to do that. And that's an indication of how deeply you can relax in just a short period of time. As a lawyer, I wanted also to talk about practicing law from a place of authenticity. And what does that mean? Authenticity is acting from your core or from your center. And when you act from your core or from your center, not only is that an effective way of practicing law, but it is a affirming way, a self-affirming way to practice law as well. So why do we value authenticity? because there's an element of truth that stems from that authenticity. Now, if you do jury work, you know juries have a very good common sense about them. It's very hard to put one over on a jury and to feed them a line. And it's true with us. We can recognize when somebody is puffing, when someone is faking it. And why is it? Why is it? Because we're so intimately familiar with our own inauthenticity that we can smell it, we can sense it when we encounter it in others. And there's a relief in being authentic. There's a relief in being who you are, because that is naturally our default position. We don't have to expend, when you are who you are and you're being authentic, you don't have to expend energy to create a persona or to act otherwise. You don't have to fake anything. And when you're acting from pretense or when you're pretending, it takes energy. And you, not only does it take energy to be what you are not, but there's also a fear or insecurity, is that, hey, I can be discovered. You know, somebody can pull the rug out of it. Oh my God, if the judge only knew I'm not as smart as I'm pretending to be. So when we're promoting another self, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and it creates a lot of anxiety to maintain that. And that I call pretense, or the preamble to tension. And so, you know, let me tell you a little bit about what I mean by practicing law authentically. For instance, I had a case. I won't go into great detail with you about it, unless this was a probate matter. But it was the end result was through a quirk in the law called pretermitted spouse. An individual who died, an elderly gentleman who had an established estate plan giving the money to his relatives, because he married somebody and died, an elderly woman who died shortly after him, his entire estate was given to her distant relatives who had never heard of him in the first place. And I represented the family to try to come up with some legal theory to try to attack or overturn that result. And we were in the litigation. I was on the phone with a very able opposing counsel. And we were having the conversation that many of you had. She spent 10 or 15 minutes starting out telling me why her case was strong and what all the weaknesses in my case were. Weaknesses in my case were. Now, the usual thing is, and I take my 15 minutes to show that no, her case is not as strong as she is, and here are our strong points, and you know. And then when she stopped with her 15 minutes, after her 15 minutes, and it was my turn to return it, out of nowhere, this was not something that was planned, I said to her, "Can you understand how my clients feel?" And something opened up. She was, in a way, startled. This is the last thing that she would expect to hear from an opposing litigator. And after a few moments of silence, she said, "Yeah, I can understand that." And then we talked about the case some more, and the case shortly thereafter settled. We didn't get all we want, but we had a weak legal position. That's what I mean about practicing law authentically. You know, I didn't have the stratagem. This is what I'm going to say to her. It just occurred, and it was the right thing to say. It was the effective thing to say. Now, practicing law authentically does not mean being passive or being soft. I'll give you another example. In the first Terri Schiavo case, a witness was called for the parents, for the defense, and I had taken this witness's deposition 2 weeks before. And she got on the stand and didn't have one or two contrary points or change a point or two. Her entire deposition testimony was the exact opposite of what she testified to in court. And I was just astounded. And so when the judge said, cross-examination, Mr. Felos, I had a copy of her deposition, and I picked it up and I slammed it. I threw it on the counsel's table, and it was a big bang, and the judge opened his eyes and everyone said, hey, what was that? Felos, he's pretty even tempered. He doesn't go in for theatrics. Well, what was that? I didn't plan that. I didn't say I'm going to do that. But there was something authentically, there was something that offended the inner sense of justice that resulted in doing that. And it was a highly, highly effective move. So when you practice law authentically, you learn to trust not only what is a response from your center, from your core, but it's effective. That doesn't mean that you respond in a way that's not appropriate in the situation, because we're highly trained attorneys, advocates. It's within the parameters of what is appropriate in the situation. So we value that sense, that core in our culture. I mean, in Hamlet, Polonius said to Laertes, to thy own self be true. And in the common vernacular, they would say to somebody who's in pretense putting it on, get real. Get real. So our goal, I said, was to encounter that source, that core. So in our next meditation, which we're going to start now, we are going to look at a little bit more closely what's in the foreground. Because once we understand what the foreground consists of, then it's easier to shift the focus to the background. So and here's a definition. Here's a couple definitions of real. That which cannot exist, without which cannot not exist, which always exists, and that which doesn't change. Now you might say, well, everything changes, doesn't it? Well, yeah. The objects in the foreground come and go, and that's what we're going to explore in this next meditation. And you'll notice that there are 3 and only 3 objects of the foreground. Bodily sensations, sensation on the bottom of your foot, sensation of breathing. There are sense perceptions, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, etc. And then our thoughts. And our thoughts come, and they can come in someone called thoughts subtle sense perceptions. Our thoughts can be visual. We can see a picture, we can see a word, we can have oral thoughts, we can smell in our thoughts. So our thoughts come in kind of the variation of our senses, but those are basically the three things in the foreground: bodily sensations, sense perceptions, and thoughts. So let us come into our second meditation position. You guys are doing really, really well. You're doing better than I am for flubbing up the slideshow. Just kind of move your shoulders a bit. We've been sitting now for about 40 minutes. If you want to stretch, that's fine. Okay. Again, sink into the seat. You can feel briefly the sensation of the butt against the chair, the soles of the feet against the floor. Again, take a moment just to sink into the silence. Now you may hear something. For instance, I hear the heat coming through the vents. You may hear a little bustle outside of the room. That's hearing, that's a sense perception. You may feel a little sensation around the eyes, the eyelids, little pulsation in the forehead. That's a bodily sensation. You may have a thought. Am I getting this? A whisper in your head, am I getting this? Or a whisper that says, hey, don't forget the pleading you have to draft this afternoon. That's just a thought. An endless succession of thoughts, bodily sensations, sense perceptions. They're all the same in that they're not there. They arise, they're there, and then they pass away. The thoughts come and go, the bodily sensations come and go. The sense perceptions come and go. Just notice for a moment the truth of that. You can try to hold on to a thought or hold on to something, but you can't. You can't for very long. It's their nature to arise, be present, and pass away. But that which knows the object, the thought, the sensation, the sense perception, doesn't arise and pass away. We're interested in what is it that knows all these objects in the foreground. Remember, you're not trying to do anything. You can't do this wrong. If you have a flurry of thoughts, what is it that knows you're experiencing the flurry of thoughts? Just step back Imagine you're the sky, boundless, vast sky. Now there are different clouds passing through, different shapes. The shapes are changing, morphing, just like your thoughts, just like the sensations. And the sky contains them all. Is the sky worried if a thunderstorm is brewing and the clouds are ominous or dark, or if bolts of lightning and thunder appear? Makes no difference to the sky. Be the sky. Right now, let all of these impermanent objects just float through. Be relaxed with whatever is in the foreground. Now, notice something. The sound of my voice is a sense perception. You hear it. Is the place where you hear or know this sound different than the place in which you know the sensation of the feet against the floor? And I've listened to my voice and feel the sensation at the same time. You can hear my voice and know it. You can feel the sensation and know it. Are they known in a different place? Is there one place of recognition for thoughts? One for sensations? One for sense perceptions? Or are they all known in the same way? Now take a moment of silence. And slowly open your eyes. So in that meditation, we started to get a little taste, a little movement away from the foreground towards the background, that in which all of the objects of the foreground, all your thoughts, ideas, wants, desires, sensations appear. We started to get a sense of that, how different the background is, how it's not, although it contains what swirls around, it's not affected in any way by the motion or activity. So in this last meditation, and you guys are doing great, this is a lot. In the last meditation, we're going to more directly encounter that background. And there's just a couple tips that we can do that helps. So for purposes of our discussion, we're going to call this background awareness. We have to give it a name in order to deal with it on a mental level. We're going to call it awareness. And there are two suggestions I'm going to give you that help to know or directly encounter that awareness. The first is a posture of non-interference. Now, what do I mean by interference or non-interference? The way that we interfere with what's happening is through judgment, comment. We have a sense perception. We see somebody walking down the street and we say, wow, nice jacket. Oh, dressed well. Boy, that doesn't match. You know, we have an opinion about everything. It's as if the world will stop revolving unless we unless we put our imprimatur on it. That's our judgment, our comments, our likes, our dislikes, our projections into the future, our thinking about the past. We can call this resistance. Now, this is not to say discernment and the thinking process is not beneficial, but we do it habitually. And that interference keeps us identified and locked in the foreground. Well, you say, George, whoa, how can I ever possibly not judge and not like or dislike? And I'm not asking you to. The only thing is to be aware of it. It's like once you're aware of it, there's a choice that says, I'm not going to buy into it. I like this, but I don't have to expound on my thoughts, or I don't have to like it a lot or not. You just notice that interference, but you don't add fuel to the fire. So all you need to do is notice. The noticing takes its power away from it. Resisting it puts fuel on the fire. You know, there's a beautiful saying that if you want to be straight, allow yourself to be crooked. It doesn't sound right. Well, how can I ever be straight if I allow myself to be crooked? But in fully or radically accepting, and I hate to use that word acceptance because it sounds like a chore, or not interfering, it's like, you know, you have a million thoughts and you're just consumed, obsessed with something, a case or this or that. You know, the thoughts are like fireworks. They go off. But if you don't invest them with more energy after the explosion, they fade away. So non-interference is like this. Most of our minds are like this. The jar on the left. The sediment is all these thoughts and stories and attachments, identifications, and likes and dislikes and all of that. And in meditation, we don't do anything. We don't get rid of them. You know, if you try to separate the sediment by putting a stick in, you just agitate it. But by non-identification, by non-interference, the sediment starts to settle until on the right, there's a clarity, there's a seeing, there's a clearness. Now, look, the sediment is still there at the bottom, but it's not a problem. It's not a problem, it's not a difficulty. The other point is, the other suggestion is welcoming. And what do I mean by that? And again, you don't have to remember all those things. You just let them come in. It's like a mirror. If you put a blue vase in front of a mirror, the mirror reflects a blue vase. If you put a green vase in front of the mirror doesn't say, I don't want to reflect it. I like blue better than green. You look at awareness in that way. It willingly welcomes everything and illuminates everything before it. So we tend to have sentries or guards in a psychological way. You know, we have a thought of doing kindness to another. We let that thought in, we like it. We have a thought of selfishness and sorry, I'm not going to let you in the gate. I'm not a selfish person. That's a bad thought. This sensation, oh, that feels uncomfortable, get away. Oh, pleasurable sensation, we let this in. In welcoming, we take the guard away. We don't discriminate against anything. We allow all of it in, and in that welcoming, like the fireworks that dissipate, like the clouds that move, we start to experience what it is that knows them. So, without further ado, come into your meditation position. Relax. Sink in. Close your eyes. Enjoy the silence a moment. If there are any bodily sensations, just let them be. Pulsating, pleasurable, unpleasurable, cold, warm, tingly, heavy. It doesn't make a difference to that which knows them, the awareness which knows them. And notice there is no effort in being aware. There's no effort needed to be who you are. That awareness is just natural. Just sink into that awareness. Let the foreground recede. We're not excluding any thoughts, any opinions, any judgments. They're just passing phenomena, passing clouds. Now be that awareness and ask yourself this question. Does this awareness have a boundary? Is there a place where this awareness is not? Look. Can you find a place where this awareness does not exist? Is there a line you can go to, like a border, a fence, and on one side is awareness, and then the other side is not? You might have that thought, that picture, that image, but that thought happens in awareness. Or is this awareness boundless, borderless, in your own experience right now, not what somebody has told you, not what you could ponder and think about, in your direct experience now? Is it borderless, boundless? Does it have a shape or a color? Certainly, the objects that appear within it have shapes and colors and forms. Is this awareness, does it have a tinge of blue, green, Is it denser somewhere else and lighter somewhere else? Just look. Or that which is it shapeless, formless, colorless? Does it hold all shapes, forms, and colors within it, but is never affected by them? You can have the brightest red thought or see the brightest red cherry. Does the redness ever touch or redden the awareness? Or is it like the mirror, just reflecting what's put in front of it? Does this awareness have a philosophy or a religion? Can we say this awareness is of any religious persuasion? Or does it hold all theories, religions, beliefs, mental constructs within it? Now look very closely. Does this awareness have a gender? Does it have a flavor to it of maleness, femaleness, otherness? Or is it genderless? Is it beyond description? Is it beyond classification? Is it beyond words? Just take another moment to enjoy this silence, this awareness. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. Well, we're going to shift gears here because it's 1 o'clock and I know some of you have to go. We're going to have our questions and answers now. And so we'll take as long as it takes. If you can stay with us, that's fine. And if not, that's fine too. We'll send you the recording. Let me just take care of a couple of pieces of business. Within a few days, you'll receive an email from me that has the Florida Bar course number for those in Florida to register. That will have the Oregon MCLE number. And if you're from New York, you'll receive instructions from us how to receive your New York certification so you can get your New York CLE. Also, for those in other states, most states allow credit for out-of-state programs that are accredited. So please, if you're from another state and you need a little help in that, or you need a form or something like that that we can help you with, please contact us. I advise you to do this on a daily basis. Start even with 10 minutes a day. Try this for 30 days and see what happens. This is a skill. You don't go into the Tour de France when you've just gotten on a bicycle for the first or second time and started riding. There's a skill in meditation that quickly accumulates the more that you do it. So try this for 10 minutes a day for 30 days and see what happens in your life. See what, be a scientist, do an experiment. So you can listen to parts of this meditation on our YouTube channel. We have a similar meditation without the intervening instruction. And that, I think, is notice the background. It's about a 17-minute tape, and you can even, there's about a 4-minute introduction. You can pass through that. And so have this if you wanted to do, want to have a guided meditation like this that you want to try for the next 30 days. So there are a lot of ways that you can approach this. We're here to assist you, but give it a try. It's been a great value to me. I hope it will be a great value to you. Also, I wanted to ask those of you who are members of organizations, state attorney's office, public defender's office, local bar associations. We do give this program for individual organizations. And so if you're in an organization that you think would benefit from this program, give me a call, drop me an email, and we'll see if we can put something together. So thank you very much for attending, and we will get to questions. So Will, that is the, do we have anyone with their hand raised?
We do have one person with a hand raised. I see Margaret. Let me allow her to talk here.
Okay, so do I have to press anything, Will?
No, I think she's unmuted. Margaret, if you have a question you'd like to ask George, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I was curious what your meditation practice is when you're involved in a trial and you have a lot of tension and time pressures. What is your meditation practice during those tough days, particularly tough days?
Mm-hmm. Well, if I can take, Margaret, if I can take some time aside during those days and just sit down for a few minutes, that is very helpful. But in those very trying times, you don't have the time. But you always, the thing is, the more that you do this practice, the more that the background becomes readily accessible to you. And so it is not that you're choosing one or the other, that both are present at the same time. So there's always that anchor. There's always that anchor of peace and relaxation available to you. Now, when you're in a really stressful situation, if you're in litigation, or if you're really being pounded, I kind of describe it as this way. You remember those inflated punching bags they have that had the sand at the bottom, so their center of gravity was low. And if you knocked it, and they had a face of somebody you didn't like, so if you punched it, it fell over, but it sprang right back.
Right.
Because of that center of gravity. So having this practice developed is like that. I'm not saying that you can't, you're always in this external peace and equanimity, but even if you're bowled over, it's harder to bowl you over, but even if you are, you come back. And even in the busiest days, I mean, if you're in court, you get a break, you go to the water fountain, you go to, you go to the restroom, you have those little moments to yourself, and in those little moments, they're all an opportunity to kind of sink back into the background. It's and to revive yourself, because that is always available to you. And the more you do this, And the more you have the facility to do that, then the easier it becomes. But you raise a good point in that a lot of people have the idea that, wow, if I were really spiritually developed, or I meditated all the time, nothing would disturb me. That's true, but only half true. Nothing disturbs that which is aware of what happens temporally, the objects in the foreground. But our body minds are always disturbed in some way. That's just the nature of them. The body is not gonna feel happy all the time. We're not gonna feel pleasure all the time. But we realize that that's not where our true happiness lies, in what's happening at the moment. And the more that it's developed, the more that it's accessible, and the more that it's there all the time. So the thing is, which I mentioned, don't start digging the well when the house is on fire, is that the more you do this, the more you find the facility. And you don't even have to think about it and say, oh, wow, after a while, you don't have to even consciously or direct yourself to sink in. It's just there. It kind of bubbles up and reminds you when you're needed to be reminded. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's see.
We do have one more hand raised from Sandra. I can go ahead and allow her to talk here.
Okay.
Sandra, do you want to unmute yourself and ask George a question?
Hey, Sandra, hi.
Maybe she was just raising her hand too. Oh, there she is.
Hi, George.
Hey, Sandra, hi.
I enjoyed the session. This is my second time with you.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I wanted to ask where a mantra comes into the meditation. Like you always hear about Om and something like that.
Mm-hmm. There are many different types of meditations. Sandra just mentioned a mantra meditation in which you repeat a sound or a name over and over again, and it could be externally or it can be internally, and you focus your attention on the sound. There are meditations in which you focus on the sensation of the breath. I did Buddhist Vipassana meditation for many times. So there are breath meditations. There are meditators who focus on a flame. So let me tell you a little story about that. About 10 years ago, I hosted a Swami from India who was traveling in the area, and a friend said, oh, can you host him for a couple of days? I said, fine. And when he was here during the summer for a couple of days, he invited me to come and visit him in India, which I did that winter. And so we would meditate. There was one other person there. We would meditate in the morning and in the evening together. And I said, Swami, what type of meditation do you do? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I've meditated on the third eye. I've meditated on the breath. There are mantras. He said, why would you want to do that? He said, if you meditate on the breath, you could become a master of the breath and maybe for a half hour not need to breathe. Or if you meditate on the third eye, you could become a master of knowledge and see different realms. But he said, what I'm interested in is what he would call the truth or awareness. He says those are kind of diversions. So some people call this type of meditation the direct path. What we're most interested in is who we really are. And by this direct path, we try to encounter that directly. I'm not saying those other meditations don't have value, and they may not increase concentration and have other benefits. But I ultimately became interested in this because I found that it was the quickest, the quickest way to directly encounter who we are. So that would be my answer to that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, we have some written questions and answers. We have Richard saying, thank you, George. Look forward to getting the recording. You're very welcome, Richard. Anonymous attendee asks, what is the best time to do this on a weekday while you are working? So if you're at work and doing work, certainly a time where you have a break. So if you have a lunch hour, you might decide to meditate for 15, 20 minutes and have your lunch for the balance. Or let's say well, in the days where you would go out somewhere and go to a restaurant, you would say, my walk is going to be the meditation. I'm not going to be on the phone. I'm going to, during that walk, direct my attention to that which is aware. I know that some people at work do kind of mini meditations in every time they answer the phone. When they pick up the phone or press the button, the sensation of pressing the button is a reminder just for that instant to look at that which is aware of the sensation of pressing the button. So you can do a series of mini short meditations and have a trigger which instills the habit in a way to remove yourself from the flow of objects to that which is aware of the flow of objects. Or if you have a time, where you have a few more minutes, just 5 minutes, just the effectiveness of meditating for a short time may work. So those are some suggestions for how you may want to do this in a work setting. Scott asks, do you have a resource or suggested course we should consider taking? Scott, we're going to be offering probably within the next 2 months, weekly meditation sessions that anyone can drop in on. That would be open to all, kind of a half-hour session where we may have some instruction, but we were going to do some meditation. We're also hoping to introduce with that time a class. So those who are interested in less compressed instruction than we had today, can receive meditation and instruction over a period of time. So we hope to have those resources available for you soon. And if you send me an email with your specific email address and contact information, we can get in contact with you specifically when we set that up. And we'd send an email to everyone on our list, but we'll specifically send that to you. There are a lot of meditation courses and teachers online. There's a lot out there. My advice to you, for those of you who look online or look to find other teachers, is use your common sense, use your discernment, and do what works for you and what resonates for you. Peter says, George, that was amazing! ! I feel so much better than before I started the CLE. I sit on the board of the Puerto Rican Bar Association here in New York. I would like to know if you would be interested in doing this program for us. We certainly would. Thank you so much, Peter. If again, you can send me an email with your individual contact information, then I can give you a call and we can chat on the phone about that and explore it. I'm so happy that you enjoyed this today. Anonymous attendee. My concern is that I will be too relaxed after meditation. Can you explain how I can maintain a high energy state while meditating or while in meditation? We don't want you, anonymous attendee, to be operating any heavy equipment right after this if you're feeling too relaxed. And let me point out that in the beginning of this meditation process, you can feel you can feel deep relaxation, deep peace, very subtle, pleasant bodily sensations as the tensions of our identification with the foreground start to release. And so, if you're hitting your head, if there's someone who's hitting their head against the wall and they stop, it's like, well, ecstasy because the pain has stopped. But after a day or after a few hours and after a day, then it almost starts to feel natural. So the more you do this, that feeling of being too relaxed or too unattached to what's going on, the more you do that, it will be less pronounced in that way. And that peace and relaxation, it becomes more second nature. So it doesn't become a restriction in anything you do. It becomes an enhancement in whatever you're doing. It makes whatever you're doing more enjoyable, makes you more effective. So I wouldn't worry too much about being too relaxed now. Obviously, if in the beginning you're very relaxed, where you feel that maybe you're not mentally sharp, it's going to take a while for the mental gears to start kicking in, then plan on meditating when you don't have to immediately make that a transition. But as you do this and as you become more familiar and comfortable with this, I think you'll find that that feeling of peace, relaxation just integrates in a beautiful way, and you won't find it to be an impediment to anything you want to do. Anonymous attendee says, do you have any suggestions where to find other guided meditations? Well, as I mentioned, you can find them on our webpage, meditationforlawyers.org, on our YouTube channel. You can find them everywhere. Just find something that works for you and something that resonates with you. And if something doesn't feel right about a teacher or doesn't sit well about what you're doing, then find another resource. There are plenty of them out there. Scott, we received your email. Will, do you have Scott's email address there? Did you receive it too?
We do, yeah, we have it. And we have one question here in the chat box. I can read it out. It's from Joseph, and it says, is there a minimum amount of time that we should meditate as we are learning the skill?
Mm-hmm. Joseph, any time is better than no time. Some time is better than a minimal time, and more time is better than some time. So start wherever you are with the time you have. As I mentioned before, if you can do this for 10 minutes a day to start out with, that's great. If you can do it for 15 minutes a day, then that's even better. And Will, I think with these questions, and we get them so often, I think our next on our list, let's put together a 10-minute guided meditation and a 15-minute meditation. So we have those available for whoever's taken the webinar and whoever asks us for this in the future. So we have something concrete to go along with our recommendation. So but I would say about, if you can do this 10 minutes, at a minimum of 10 minutes, that's great, Joseph.
There's one more question in the chat, in the Q&A box, if you'd like to see that.
Okay, let's see. Anonymous asks, is it unusual at the beginning of meditation practice to feel untethered during the practice? No, it's not. It's not unusual. In essence, we're never untethered. You can't lose who you are. You can never not be aware. Now you may say, hey, but I'm sleeping. Am I aware? Well, when you're dreaming, you're creating, you're aware of your dreams. But even if you're in deep sleep, just because there may be no objects that awareness is aware of, it doesn't mean that it's not awareing at that time. So let's get that straight first. You are never untethered. You are always connected to what you are, to who you are. Now, in the beginning, the feeling of being untethered to the objects is very common. And what we have to do is this. We are so tightly connected, identified, bound to those objects, believing that that's what we are. We're so tightly bound to that idea that as we loosen that idea, we start to have the feeling that we're untethered. But in fact, we're never untethered. Those objects appear in awareness. We could say are created by awareness. So it's in the beginning of this, those feelings will be more pronounced. That in order to highlight the extent of our contraction, we kind of point out the fact that that contraction is habitual and not who we really are. But in the other answer about, wow, I feel so relaxed, I don't know if I want to get in my car. That feeling of untetheredness, I would suggest to you, become friendly with it, become interested in it. Become that untetheredness does not mean non-involved or passive. It just means that you're seeing your relationship to those objects in a different way. And it may feel more pronounced in the beginning. And then the more you meditate, the more you're comfortable with that, it almost becomes second nature. So yeah, in the beginning, we're going to have, because this is a real, if you look at it from a mental point of view, a tremendous paradigm shift. You know, thinking that what we think, feel, and sense is what we are, to coming to know that what we are is which contains it, knows it, and creates it. That's a huge shift. And so you might feel lots of different things in the beginning, but they're okay. You get used to them and you'll settle into them. So Will, any other questions?
Looks like that's all.
Well, thank you all for attending. This has been just a joy for me to share this, and especially to share this with those in the legal profession. So thank you so much and take care. And again, if you need anything, want to talk to me, have a question, call me, send me an email. Bye for now.